Hi, welcome to Math Maxtra. This is Saritha. Today we are going to know what are the number of angles in a triangle. Now we will know what are the number of angles in a triangle. See, first look at this figure. This is a triangle ABC. ABC. These are the interior angles of a triangle, that is angle A and angle B, angle C. We very well know the sum of interior angles is equals to 180 degrees, that we have seen in the properties of triangles. The first property is what? The sum of interior angles of a triangle is equal to 180 degrees. So now here these angle A, angle B, angle C are interior angles. Okay. But what are the different types of angles are possible in order to make them a sum of 180 degrees? Means whether the three angles are that we have to consider are acute angle, or whether we consider obtuse angle, or whether you consider right angles. So that we have to see. See, means what are the possible ways of angles when we consider the sum of interior angles is equal to 180 degrees. So what are the different possibilities we'll write now. See, you consider first case, you consider all the acute angles. Check whether their sum is equal to 180. See, consider 50 degrees plus 60 degrees, 70 degrees. Check whether the sum is equals to 180 or not. Okay, 120 plus 60, 180. Okay, it sum to 180 degrees. That is why, so there is a possibility of having three acute angles in a triangle. Yes, this is one possibility we are considering. You consider the second case. You consider one obtuse angle. Okay, so the obtuse angle is somewhere here. I am considering it is 120 degrees. So what is left to make it 180 degrees? 60 degrees left. So in the 60 degrees, we have to take two angles. Yes, these two angles we have to share it in the 60 degrees. So there may be any possibilities, but the angle must be always less than 60, right? So if we consider these two angles are acute angles, then only it is the sum of these three interior angles is equal to 180 degrees. So what are the different possibilities? So I am considering 30 degrees, 30 degrees. What are these two? These two are acute angles. This is obtuse angle. So if you consider these two angles are greater than 90 or obtuse angle, there is no possibility of considering greater than 60 degrees in place of these two angles. That is why, so if we consider one obtuse angle, the other two angles must be acute angles, right? So we'll consider one more case, that is you consider one right angle in the place of one angle. So okay, I am considering 90 degrees in place of angle A. So what are the other two possibilities of angles? See, you check, if you take, no, you have only 90 degrees left. In the 90 degrees, you have to consider two angles. So what those two angles must be? Whether they are acute angle or obtuse angle or right angle. So there is no possibility of considering right angle or obtuse angle in place of these two. Because if you sum these three angles, it sum up to 180 degrees. But if we consider other two angles as a right angle or obtuse angle, it will exceed the 180 degrees. That is why there is no way of considering them as a right angle or obtuse angle. That is why these two must be acute angles only. So if we consider one angle as a right angle, the other two angles must be acute angles. Okay. So I am considering 90. So one more 90 left. So one is 50 degrees and one is 40 degrees. Okay. 90 plus 90, 180. Okay. Fine. So these are the three cases we are considering. See how many maximum number of acute angles are possible in the triangle. Now we'll see. The question is how many maximum number of acute angles are possible in a triangle. See, we have considered these three cases. In these three cases, in the first case, all three are acute angles. In the second case, only two are acute angles. In the third case, two are acute angles. See, how many maximum number of acute angles we are considering? So, there is a possibility of having two acute angles, three acute angles. But the maximum number is 3 only, because in the triangle, so the maximum number of angles are 3. Yes, it must have 3 angles. Those 3 angles, if we consider acute angles also, it is possible. That is why, so the maximum number of acute angles in a triangle is 3. Yes. Then what are the minimum number of acute angles we have to consider? Check. If we take only one acute angle and other two angles are maybe obtuse angle or right angle. If you consider that case, is it possible in the case of triangle? No, right? Because see, even if you take a right angle or obtuse angle, the other two angles must be acute. So that is why the minimum number of acute angles we are considering in a triangle are 2. You see in this case, this is right angle we are considering. These two are acute angles. This is obtuse angle we are considering. These two are acute angles. So how many minimum number of acute angles? 2, right? Yes, that is why the minimum number of acute angles in a triangle is 2. See the next one. So the number of acute angles in a triangle is, observe the difference from the above 2 points to with this point. See here in this point we are mentioning simply the number of acute angles in a triangle, means how many number of acute angles are possible in a triangle. See in the first case we have seen the maximum number of acute angles. In the second case we have seen minimum number of acute angles. But here in this point there is no mention of maximum or minimum of acute angles. Here simply he is mentioning the number of acute angles are possible. How many number? So there may be a chance of having 2 acute angles. There may be a chance of having 3 acute angles. Right? So that is why this answer is 2 or 3. 2 or 3. So there is a chance of having 2 acute angles. There is a chance of having 3 acute angles. So that is why you observe what is given in the question carefully. So in the theoretical questions, they may ask from this type of points. You should observe the difference in the statements. Okay, then only go for the answers. So the next one is the number of acute angles in a triangle is at least. At least, see the word at least is mentioning in this point. See the number of acute angles in a triangle is at least, means minimum. Sometimes he may not mention the word minimum. He may mention the word at least. So that time also you have to consider the minimum value if it is given at least in the question. So how many minimum number of acute angles are possible? We have seen that is 2. So here at least 2 acute angles are possible. See the next one, the number of acute angles in a triangle is at most. At most means maximum. How many maximum number of acute angles are possible in a triangle? So So sometimes this maximum word is not mentioned in the question. So if they mention at most, you should identify, okay, maximum number. How much is the maximum number? That time you answer, see how many maximum number of acute angles are possible? 3. So this is 3. In this way, you have to answer. Okay. Now, next case, we are considering how many right angles are possible similar to acute angles. See. Now, see. The maximum number of right angles in a triangle is. You see these cases? See, in this case, the first case, we don't even have one right angle. So consider the second case also. In this also, we don't even have one right angle. So see the third case. Yes, there is a one right angle along with two acute angles. So how many number of right angles are possible in a triangle? Maximum number of right angles. So in this 0 right angles, in this also 0 right angles, in this 1 right angles. So what is the maximum number among these three? 1 is the maximum number. So that is why maximum number of right angles in a triangle is 1. Yes? Then now tell me what are the minimum number of right angles in a triangle is? See in this case 0 right angles. In this case also 0 right angles. See what is the minimum number among these three? 0 right angles is also possible, right? So that is the minimum case. That is why. So the minimum number of right angles in a triangle is 0. Check the third point. The number of right angles in a triangle is means the all possible ways we have to think when the question is like the number of right angles in a triangle. So that time all possible ways you have to write. You have to consider the minimum number of right angles as well as maximum number of right angles. Check. So minimum 0 or maximum 1. So there is a two ways possible. That is why if the question if he mentions the number of right angles in a triangle is, that time you have to answer 0 or 1. So both may be answer. So you have to check the options carefully. Okay. So the next one, the number of right angles in a triangle is at least. So I have said you the difference when the word at least is given in the question. See, you have to think the minimum values. Yes, that is why how many number of right angles are possible? At least 0. See, the last point, the number of right angles in a triangle is at most. Means you observe the word at most means maximum number. How many maximum number of right angles are possible? 1, right? So you have to answer it as a 1. See the third case when you consider one obtuse angle. So that time we have two acute angles. So in the case, what is the maximum number of obtuse angles in a triangle? See the first case, how many obtuse angles are there? 0. See, consider the second case. In this, how many obtuse angles are there? 1. See the third case, there are no obtuse angles. Yes, how many maximum number of obtuse angles are possible? Only 1. See the second case, only 1. In these two cases, 0 obtuse angles also, it will sum up to 180 degrees. That is why the maximum number is 1. Check the minimum number of obtuse angles. See, in this 0, in this also 0 obtuse angles. So the minimum number of obtuse angles are 0. Even if you have 0 obtuse angles also, you can make it up to sum up to 180 degrees. Check the third point. So the number of obtuse angles in a triangle is So you have to write all possible ways of having obtuse angles, whether you are having 0 obtuse angles or 1 obtuse angles or 2 obtuse angles. So there are only two possibilities. You can either have 0 obtuse angles or you can have 1 obtuse angle. Yes. So check the next point. So the number of obtuse angles in a triangle is at least. Observe the word at least. So here you have to consider minimum number. So means the minimum, in other words, they will give you at least. At least. So that is 0. How many? The number of obtuse angles in a triangle is at most. So here in this case you have to consider maximum. How many maximum number of obtuse angles are possible? 1. So this is the way we have to answer the theoretical questions in the exam. Okay. So this type of questions, there may be a chance of asking this type of questions. Okay. Thank you.